Yeah. So I just like to just start with before I'd like to discuss the lesson that I observed, but before that I just like to talk about what reading for pleasure means to you specifically.
Okay, so for me, it's children choosing the books that they are interested in, looking through the pictures, reading some of the text, and then being able to talk about what they've read. So sharing their experiences of what they've been through and how it relates to the book, predicting, retelling, giving an opinion. So just discussion around the book, I think, as well.
And this lesson that you chose for me to observe, what aspects of this do you feel help in fostering reading for pleasure?
So first we just look at the front cover and analyze that. So again, that's getting their ideas coming out, and it's using their imagination. So they haven't read it yet, so they don't know what the story is going to entail. But from looking at the pictures, I think that's quite an enjoyable experience because it could really just leave their imagination to run free and think about what the story could be about before they actually know what it is about. So that's why I did that bit first, and then looking through the pictures first and not reading the text straight away. Again, it prompts them to use their imagination. So again, that's reading for pleasure. And then afterwards, after we read the text and I gave them some time to do independent reading, I did a little game which we do comprehension based. It's like a competition to see who can get the most points by answering the most questions correctly. So again, that's pleasurable for them because it's like a competition.
Yeah.
And they enjoy it.
Okay. And you have, of course, this was a guided reading lesson.
Yes, the first bit, yeah.
Yeah, and then you had children on different tables. There was a table that was working with iPads.
Yeah. So what happens is I have my reading focus group, and then the other tables will be doing reading or spelling activities. So the group that were on tablets, they were using a program called Education City, and it has English games and maths games. But when they use the tablets during guided reading, they're only allowed to do the English activities. So they would have chosen maybe a spelling activity, a phonics activity, or a reading activity on there. And there's also some stories on there that they could just listen to. Free reading, free listening.
And okay, so that pretty much covers your what is it? The lesson itself.
Yes.
Yeah, and I wonder if you've taken any of because I know that these schools have had some training in reading for pleasure specifically. So in your time in the school, have you undergone or attended any trainings that focused on that?
What I've done in school, as part of our staff meetings, is we've done reading standardization and moderation. So looking through different children's reading evidence, whether it be guided reading books or guided reading folders, and just look at some of the activities that they have done and just assess what level they are at, what stage they are at in their reading. So that's what I've done in school. Also phonics lead, so I've done a lot of phonic based training. But that's it really.
Okay, so you haven't done anything that is specific to reading for pleasure?
No.
And has the school, are you aware of the larger, because this is a gold school, so are you aware of what's going on in the rest of the school? Reading for pleasure?
I'm not too sure about the rest of the school, but I do know that they, again, do something very similar to me where they have different groups during guided reading sessions. They have their focus group, and then the other group, one of the other groups, they would do kind of reading for pleasure activity, whether it be free reading or using the tablets. So they do very similar structure to what I do.
And while I was sitting in the library, I was just taking a look at the books that you had, and could you just talk to me a little about how put that in place and how you set that up.
You mean the book corner in my
Yeah.
room? So I just try to have a range of different types of books, so non-fiction, fact books, poetry books, and story books. I try to have a range of levels as well in there, so from picture books to books which have picture and text on the same page, and then some books with text only, just so that they can choose what level book they want to read. 'Cause some of the more able readers, sometimes they just want to have a look at pictures and try and figure out for themselves what's going on. And then you have some of the less able readers who really want to try and challenge themselves to a book which has text and a lot of text in it. So I just try to keep it very open with the choice of books that I have in the corner.
And do you, what, besides this, is this something that you change on a regular basis, the books?
No, I don't change them because we have a coordinator who will give us some money towards reading. But we found that we wanted to replenish our guided reading set books this year. So this year we've chosen to put our money into that rather than classroom books. But we do have a school library that we take them to every fortnight. And again, there's a wider range of books in there, all sectioned, and they get to take that book home for 2 weeks and return it on a fortnightly basis. So whatever they don't get to read in the book corner, if they've read all the books already, they have the opportunity to get books from the library.
Okay. And have you ever, or are you, conducted surveys or gathered information in any way to kind of inform book selection for your class?
No, I haven't done a survey. I just personally myself have had a look at the books. So this year, like I said, our money went to guided reading sets. So I had a look at what's missing, what we could do more of. So it was just kind of a little search for myself rather than a survey. I haven't done a survey, no.
And what reading program are you using is there a core reading program?
No, we just have the coloured books and the stages from the Oxford Reading Tree.
Okay. And I saw that you were using the decodable readers for your guided reading lessons. You had stage 5, I think.
Yes.
And the children were doing there was a night book, and then there was the book that you guys were doing. So are you using, for guided reading, you're using only decodable books?
We have, so for some of my more able readers, I'd give them a book with more text.
Okay.
And then at the beginning of the year, I had just picture books for my less able. But now that they're all able to read, I don't really use the picture books as much. I rather just let them read through the pictures that are already in the book before we read the text, just to get their imagination through that way. Okay. But they're all on decodable books. Okay. And every now and again, I challenge my more able with just text.
Because this is like the phonics strand of Oxford Reading Tree, which is it's tied in with Floppy's phonics.
Right.
So if you're doing stage 5, you do this. You don't really encounter much outside of what you've done. And so you're saying that this is primarily what you're using for your guided reading. And are there any non-decodable readers that you're using outside of, so you've got the classroom library and you've got your guided reading books. Are there any other books and then there's the classroom library, any other thing that the children have access to that?
Just tablets. Okay. So again, they can access reading through their tablets. Okay. In the library, there is like a listening audio book. Okay. I don't know what you call it, but you just put the headphones on and you play the audio books. So some of my early readers read through that way.
Oh, okay. So you've got for the phonics itself, are you just using the letters and sounds sequence?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so you don't have like a read writing or any one of those. Okay. And do you feel like the reading probe, so you have the Floppy's phonics readers, do you feel like those books tend towards sort of help you foster reading for pleasure? Do you find
In a way, because they are quite relatable books.
Okay.
They have stories which are based on the kids kind of what they might go through in real life, you know, losing something and finding it again, or going on a trip to the park and things. So I think they enjoy those books because they can talk about times when they have been to a park or lost
Yeah.
something, or their zip got stuck or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think the book is quite relatable and enjoyable because it's relatable.
And did you so for this guided reading lesson, of course, children had worksheets and they were
Yeah,
doing,
one table had
and one
worksheets.
of them were doing like a response to a book. And but apart from this, what opportunities did children get to read independently during the day?
So in guided reading, like I said, there'd be one activity where they'd be doing some silent reading themselves. And then sometimes through English, if we're doing something based on a book, whether it be a storybook or non-fiction book, we'd put, if we had enough copies, a book on each table for them to go back and to refer to whilst they're doing their work. Also in topic, for example, today in topic, we're going to be starting our unit of Queen Victoria, and we're going to have books about Queen Victoria on the tables for them to research and jot down notes. So we try to cross-curricular it as much as we can, as much as the timetable allows us to.
Yeah, and but so apart from, do you have opportunities during the day where children can just go choose a book and read without there being any?
Not really, if I'm honest. The timetable is so packed, it's very rare that I'd say, right, you finished your work, go and get a book. We're always challenging them in different ways, but I guess that's something that we don't do as much as they would probably like.
Why do you think? Because maybe in higher upper classes, maybe that's something that's, I'm imagining
Maybe.
it must be something that they're doing, because this is a gold school. But why do you think the timetable is packed?
I think for us, I've been trying to challenge them further. So if they do finish their work early, I would say, well, how could you add this to improve your work? How could you, you know, edit this? And so because we have such a big focus as well on editing and challenge and improving their learning, the time that they might have, that little last 5 minutes of the lesson where they do finish early, I'm more pushing for them to challenge themselves in their learning in that subject, rather than just going and getting a book. And sometimes when there is time at the end of the day, right at the end of the day, if we don't have an assembly, say, they would want to do something like show and tell, or, you know. So, yeah, that's something that maybe for me personally I could do, make time for a little bit more. We also have soft start, which is when they come in first thing in the morning. And it's like that time just before lessons start, and when they first come in, so it's about 15 minutes. Again, I have phonics-based activities because we've got such a big push on phonics in year one. We do things like flashcards and phonics games on the interactive whiteboard. And so again, maybe after the phonics screening check, that's something we could do in the mornings, just get a book.
When is the phonics screening check?
In June, mid-June, yeah.
And then July, end of July is where term.
Yes, that's right.
So you have that bit of.
Yeah, definitely. Soft starts every morning.
And do you ever find yourself sharing like your own, I don't know, are you like a book reader? Is that something you like to do?
I must admit, I don't really read books. I do enjoy reading books when I get the time. For me, it's just the time.
The teachers don't really get the time.
All day, every day. So yeah.
So do you ever find yourself sharing your own reading habits with the children, or talking about what you've read? Or
I will talk about what I've read to them, yes, but not really reading habits. No, I would say I'd do that.
Okay, and then so we've covered. I just have to make sure that I'm not missing. How sometimes I go home and I'm like,
Oh yeah, no problem. That's fine.
So we talked about you didn't really do training specific to reading for pleasure.
No.
You are the phonics head. I did know that. So, and yeah. And we're talking about, so I have questions about how do you balance reading time that focuses on developing reading skills and reading time that focuses on developing reading for pleasure.
Right, so again, within the structure of our guided reading, we have that bit at the beginning where they're just walking through the pictures only.
Okay.
And like I said, I think that's quite enjoyable for them because it's
Okay.
free. They just,
Yeah.
their imagination can really come into play there, and then they talk about what they think's going on.
Okay.
And then the skills bit comes after that, where we think about decoding skills like, using phonic fingers, breaking the word into syllables or into parts. So there is elements of the lesson where they have more reading for pleasure and more reading for skills.
Okay.
And I'd say that's balanced half and half within the 30 minutes of the lesson.
Okay. And then you have, do you have time during the day where you're reading out a story to children with no skill focus? It's just something that you're just reading.
Again, at the end of the day, that's when I would more do that, just sit down and read them a story.
Okay.
But unfortunately, when we do have the time, a little bit of time at the end of the day, I'm doing phonics, I'm doing spellings with them. And then when I do let them choose what they want to do, they want to do show and tell.
Yeah.
I do sometimes. There's Oxford, what's it called? Oxford Owl.
Yeah.
And I put on a story and I press play and turn the pages.
Yeah.
So I do that. I do that maybe once every 2 weeks. That's the only time when they would
do that. But yeah, I relate because I'm like I was a phonics fanatic almost myself.
Oh, wow.
So I know every chance I got with kids, I was like, okay, where's the flashcard?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
because it's kind of like you have a deadline for this. So I suppose
there's so many other There's so many other focuses.
Yeah.
At the moment, it just seems like reading for me, and I'm not sure about the other classes, to be fair. They might do more reading than I do, but I'm just being honest about my class situation.
Yeah.
Reading is not something, reading for pleasure is not something that we do very often. It's more would be within a lesson, within library time, within guided reading time. But those other little pockets of time that we get, a little 10 minutes here and there, I'm on something else. So.
And library time, you said fortnightly?
Yes, yeah.
And then whenever you have done independent reading, when they go to the library, is it just to issue the books, or do they also get to sit and read the books?
They get to sit and read for half an hour.
Half an hour. And do you find that whenever they get either here, anytime that you do some independent reading, do you also sit and read something, or are you basically monitoring the children?
I kind of just I'll ask one of them to come and read to me if any child wants to read to me or talk to me about their book.
Yeah.
That's what I would be doing during the library sessions.
And they're
or searching and hunting for any books I could use.
Yeah.
In my English or topic lessons.
Okay. And so the children that come to you to talk to you, is this something? I imagine it's something that would happen fairly regularly.
Just every 2 weeks when we're in the library.
Okay.
Once I've turned on the computer and set up the system for me to be able to return and issue books, once that's done, I have about 15 minutes where I just say, I might choose somebody who I haven't heard read for a long time, or I'll just keep it open and say, does anyone want to read to me? And they usually all want to come. Yeah. So I kind of just say, well, put your hands up, and then I select a few, and they come. They either read to me or talk to me about what their book is about.
Yeah. And so you've got, I think I have an idea of, how do you set up choice during these independent reading sessions?
Yeah, so you mean in the library?
Yeah.
They just go and choose their own book.
Yeah, because then, and there you don't really, if you saw a child who's like at a low reading level reach for a really...
I don't stop them. Okay. I just leave them because that, when we're in guided reading, I choose the books for them to read. and so they don't have that opportunity for challenging themselves. So if they want to go and choose a Harry Potter book, I'm absolutely fine with that.
Okay. And then you're not supplementing the Floppies phonics with anything else, so that's your core.
Yes.
And you have what, fiction and non-fiction?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. Are you doing anything else like the traditional tales or any other decodable books?
We do. So we have an English unit in Spring 1, which is Spring 2, which is traditional tales, and we focus all our English on Jack and the Beanstalk, Three Little Pigs, and again.
Is this the ORT readers again, or is this just traditional tales
just
generally?
Traditional tales generally, and what I would do for that unit, I'd just have one of the tables. I'd just have a range of fairy tales, and they'll just choose one to read during the guided reading. So see like how you saw one of the tables doing tablets, or one of the tables doing comprehension. They just have a table of fairy tales.
And they can choose and read. And those would not be decodable books. They would be
just
regular
storybooks from wherever I could get them from.
Okay. And who decides, or how do you decide what sort of books will be added to the library, like the main?
That's not me. That's the reading leader.
Okay. That's I can imagine that would.
Yeah, she does. Yeah. There's a librarian in there as well who organizes them.
But for example, every year in kind of when you do replenish books in the library, year 1 teachers consulted as to what their children are reading? And
no, only for our guided reading sets out here, but not for the library books.
Okay, not for that. And is there anything specifically that you're aware of that the school has done to engage boys?
So we try to have boy friendly books. Like superhero books and Harry Potter. When we choose our core text for English, we try to choose one that we know are going to definitely engage the boys and motivate them to have an imagination, write, better. So, we do definitely try to choose a core text which is more boy friendly.
And when they do get to read independently, take the books home, etc., do the students get to talk to anyone about, or to you about the books that they're reading?
So we encourage them to do book reviews at home. We do have reading diaries, which we ask the parents to sign, just so we know that they are reading to somebody or talking to somebody about their book. So we just usually use those to monitor whether somebody's hearing them read or talking to them about the books that they've read.
And reading, you mean reading sort of like logs with the reading?
Yeah, like a reading log, that's right, which they take home. It's like a communication between us and the parents, really.
And are there any events that the schools organised that were just dedicated to reading for pleasure?
So we have Reading Week, where we have dressing up, read to a teddy. We might mix classes and read to a buddy. We might have a specific company come in to do like workshops and special assemblies with the children. We also have Shakespeare Week, when they would have read like a child-friendly version of Shakespeare tale story, and then we'll do activities based on that story.
And the week that you're talking about, the Reading Week, what kinds of workshops are we talking about?
So we might have a drama company come in and come and do like a, what do you call it? Is it called pantomime? Pantomime the children will watch. So.
And with these, is it something that when you have the Reading Week, is it school-wide or just your?
No, school-wide.
And do year 1 children, and you're saying that you have older classes come into?
We might mix the classes within year one. So my class would read find a buddy from the class next door, and they'd read together.
So it would be within year ones and not across, like maybe
Yeah.
year 4 reading with year 1.
No, we have done that in the past, but we didn't do that this year. But we have
Okay.
definitely done that in the past.
Okay. So when you've done, are these part of like these events that you have, or have you had like a reading buddy scheme at all?
No, it's not a scheme. It's just part of the events that we have. Yeah.
And so, but this year you're saying that they haven't had an opportunity to.
Not with year one. I don't know if other year groups have, but year one we haven't done it yet this year.
Okay.
I know we do read to reception later on in the year as well.
Okay. And why would you say that with events such as these, how do you think they impact the students? Or what have you noticed about?
Well, with Reading Week, it's definitely a big way of engaging them into reading, especially the dressing up. It helps them to understand stories more if they get into character, doing hot seating and role playing. So it gives them a deeper understanding of what they read. I find that it motivates them to improve their writing. It gives them opportunities to be an author. So they know that they're reading, they're writing to impress a reader. So I think it definitely encourages them to engage more with a book and to motivate them to improve their writing.
And when you say Reading Week, is this just like all week you collapse the timetable and this is what they're...
We don't collapse the timetable. We'll still do our English and our maths and our phonics and topic in the afternoons. But we might have a book that we more focus on in English to do with Reading Week. In guided reading, we might have different fun activities going on instead of just the group activities. We might get them to link it with art, paint a picture of the story setting, drama, hot
and
seating.
It's like more of a theme.
Yeah, we would have a theme, so it might be stories from around the world. Sometimes, most of the time, we have a theme.
Okay. And that theme then goes into the English lesson.
Yes, yeah.
And the guided reading lesson.
Mm-hmm.
But you still kind of doing
still do our
phonics,
maths, our topic, our phonics, yeah.
And how much do you know about the Reading for Pleasure agenda in the school and like the goal status? Have you?
I'm not too sure on that. The reading lead would be able to best tell you, yeah.
And we've covered, how do you think? Okay, and I'm just thinking of my context because I'm from Pakistan. So if I went into a school and talked about reading for pleasure, they wouldn't quite have a concept of what that was because we use the read writing and floppy phonics,
right?
But it's all really focused on
and structured, yeah.
So where any awareness that you have about reading for pleasure, where does that come from? Is it
it comes from as phonics lead, I often have to meet with the English team. And the reading lead would be there and she'd share her ideas about what reading for pleasure is all about and how we should be implementing it in our classrooms. I haven't, like I said, done any training to understand what reading for pleasure means, but it kind of just comes from conversations with her and the English lead.
Yeah, but then, that is something that is being talked about in school.
Oh, yes, it's definitely talked about.
Yeah.
It's definitely talked about, and that's why, we've always had a library, but it hasn't always been as good as it is now. It's much better now that there's a much bigger range of books. Like I said, we have audio books in there. We have, lots of good quality texts that they can really sit down and enjoy, pick up a book I want to enjoy reading by themselves, So I think we've tried to equip ourselves as a school, but I think it's just for individual teachers to really let it happen because, like I said, the focus is always on something else.
Yeah.
And even though we understand what reading for pleasure is, sometimes I feel like for me, it get pushed aside sometimes, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And when you say now, you said that we didn't have